We learn a decent bit about this odd world that the Straw Hats have found themselves in this chapter, as well as having some questions finally answered about some of the weirder details of the land. But let's not waste too much time, because we have a lot to cover in One Piece chapter 1128.
And this time around, we don't have any cover series installment, so instead we have a color spread of what looks like the crew if they were kind of stuffed into the Harry Potter universe, or Mashley, depending on if you watch that series, but not too much to discuss here.
So we'll move right into the chapter title, being very simply RPG, which we can go out on a limb and assume means role-playing game and not rock and propelled grenade.
No, although it's always worth considering. But starting on page 1, Sanji notes off the bat, starting off real hot there, Sanji, that there are too many dudes around for this to have been a dream, leading to a fairly disgusted Nami look as she's still being held in his arms, and just having to ask what kind of dreams he seems to be having.
Yeah, and go figure, he ignores that question and instead just leaps off the wall, down to the ground off of the castle below, where the rest of the group is waiting, as Zoro is explaining that he woke up on the other side of town and just happened to find Luffy because of all the noise being made as he was beating up the giant rabbit.
And keeping in trend, Luffy also seems to be just kind of ignoring this, though, as he immediately addresses Usopp, and he has a lot of faith in the guy. He's like, you could have taken the cat lion, though, right? Like, you didn't need us, so it was just kind of for show. But Usopp started off in probably the worst position, as he woke up and he was already in the clutches, in the jaws of that beast.
Yeah, and on to the next page, he actually, to me, was very impressive with how he was able to assess their situation, noting that their outfits do seem to resemble Elbaf attire, although there's no way the giants would have these sizes of clothes that just fit them so well, ready for them. So Nami wonders if they themselves could have been gigantified, but then also notes that there is a very fake design to the trees and really everything around them.
It seems like all throughout this chapter, the group is actually kind of poised and collected in terms of, now that they're together and not an immediate threat, they're able to assess the situation pretty quickly. But they also decide pretty quickly that the way to get the most information is going to be if they head in to ask the locals for answers. And thanks to, I guess, Sanji's horny powers, they are able to say with pretty strong certainty that the rest of the crew, or at least just Robin, is not where they are as well.
Yeah, and again gets made fun of by Nami again, like, are you a dog? What are you doing? But Luffy himself is predictably very excited at just any chance for adventure, while Nami and Usopp are their usual selves, being much more nervous, not only with the uncertainty of the land they found themselves in, but also the fact that even though they're in a very wide open space, there's no wind whatsoever. It's just a very dead, eerie sort of vibe.
Yeah, it's not also just like an artificial world. It definitely feels just kind of off. There's something off here that they're starting to piece together. And before they can get the chance to think about this uncomfortable thought for too long, they start to hear another being heading towards them, as they can look up and see a large grasshopper with an old man mounted atop it like a motorcycle, quickly rides up to them. Luffy, excited to see something kind of like similar to the Flying Fish Riders from Sabaody, but Nami again just being terrified by everyday creatures now dwarfing them.
Yeah, and then Sanji just rattles off a bunch of questions to the old-timer, first asking, who are you? Where is this place? Do you know where our crewmates could be? And I mean, you know, this was a lot, and the old guy kind of notes that, like, hey, that's a lot of questions. But then apologizes and says he's in too much of a rush to just sit and chat with them.
He does leave them with at least a small bit of information, though, before he departs, just saying, remember, this is the land of the sun god. Again, reiterating that the people of this land are fully bought into this idea of the sun god, or their sun god, being the real one, before also warning them that they should probably stay away from the Great Stein Castle, which he helps to maintain, because a giant cat lives there.
Yeah, and after initially mistaking the name Iscat for the name of a person, Luffy nearly reveals to him that they had just whooped that cat's ass, but luckily is stopped just in time by Usopp covering his mouth, and you can see the rest of the crew, especially Nami, are also looking guilty, as he continues to tell them that he was drawn here by a bunch of other issues and things going on around, including the ear god being burned.
And he does mention, he's like, oh, if you're hungry, you guys should head into town for some fodder rations. And as he's trying to be a kind, helpful stranger, they're all just looking so guilty because no one in the crew can lie. They're being so obvious about it. But he also tries to give them a warning that really ended up being taken as a challenge by Luffy when he told them, don't follow this road. The Rabid Guardians protect the Sun God's temple beyond this point. No one has ever ventured past there and returned to tell the tale.
Yeah, and I mean, Nami tried to stop him, but it was too late. We see, he's fidgeting on this page, and then into the next page, darts right off. No one's gonna stop him. He hears that as a challenge.
And they realize they don't have a lot of time to think anymore, so they thank him for his help. Nami gives him a flirtatious wink, which does kind of shock him, it looks like. But now you look and see the rest of the monster trio, who Zoro is about just as fired up as Luffy is.
Yeah, and I mean, Sanji is kind of right when he tells them, at this point, you two just enable one another. And like, they really don't think ahead. They're just like, oh, a fight, let's go.
Yeah, they're ready to go. And it's only at this point, once they've already departed, that the helpful old man finally notices as well that the castle has pretty much just had parts of it demolished, and he never even noticed, but the guilty party's already gone.
Yeah, and we see the rest of the crew chasing after Luffy, trying to convince him to stop, but he's just excited that this place reeks of adventure. So they're gonna just continue running, and they start to note that the road just seems endless. It's long, and they just keep going for eternity, and then start to notice that the castle in the distance actually seems to resemble the one that they just departed from.
And it is kind of funny that they had Luffy in the front of this group, because he's not going to be the one to be able to piece this together soon enough, but he does notice somebody else running towards him, also wearing Elbaf attire, and he doesn't think much of it, decides, I'm just going to dodge instead, before running face first into this gigantic mirror wall. And his whole face is just collapsed up against this, and his full force run was most definitely enough to fracture and crack this like two-way glass.
Yeah, and I mean, that just speaks to him as a person, that he was like, oh, I'll just dodge it, and right into it, not even thinking. But as a result, as the glass begins to shatter, the crew and the villagers that are just around start to see what to them appears to be the sky breaking in front of them.
These poor people, like we talked about last time, where it seemed like the plagues were starting, now the sky is falling, all their gods are dying.
The Straw Hats have been here for 20 minutes.
They brought their own Ragnarok about in 20 minutes. But they do realize something. Once that glass has moved away, they can see this gigantic door, and what looks like it leads out to a huge cage surrounding this entire thing, almost like an enclosure.
Yeah, and we can also see more of the Lego bricks that have kind of built this entire area sitting down on the floor below them.
They also do hear one other thing as they're talking to themselves, though, and that's a voice crying out for help.
Yeah, and we see the source of those tearful cries at the start of the next page, where Chopper is just crying tears of relief and joy to finally see his friends and be freed from his steel collar that he couldn't get off.
Yeah, for dropping the rest of the crew and everyone else into this fantastical world he built for them, like a whole nation. He puts our poor boy Chopper in a steel collar.
He's gonna torment this little guy
by himself. And to make it even worse, while Nami attempts to comfort Chopper, she talks about how she owes him for this hug.
He owes, yeah. It's just like, well, and Usopp calls her out for that. Like, that's messed up. You were just scared out of your mind 10 minutes ago.
But that wasn't before he was able to still piece together. These clothes had to have come from something and be for something specific to have this level of craftsmanship. They're likely meant to be adornments for what would be kind of like dolls for these giants. And he starts to think about what the true giants might actually look like and be.
Yeah, dude, I do want to just shout out Usopp. He did have a rough start to the chapter, but already we're seeing him. He's very keen. He's figuring stuff out in the moment. Like, this is definitely going to be a great arc for him.
And as this is happening, the other people start to realize other things as well, because Luffy and Sanji put their heads together to realize that all of these structures are made up of these blocks, which also means a little bit less impressive for their intelligence that the rabbit they cooked and beat up earlier was entirely made of plastic, and that the smell they smelled when cooking it was from burning plastic, which for Sanji, as just an intelligent individual, I'm kind of surprised he would have never thought about that.
Yeah, like he got it in retrospect, but especially if he's the cook, you think he would catch on to, hey, maybe it's this. But he does keenly notice that the glass that they passed through earlier is looking different from this side.
And it's when he does mention this that the rest of the crew looks up to seemingly notice two-way glass for the first time that they've ever seen in their world. And for those who don't notice, for two-way glass, it's something that you can see entirely through on one side, but the other is changed to a certain way so that you
just be reflective.
Yeah, it's just reflective back to you, like it would be a mirror. But Sanji unfortunately continues his streak, which immediately turns pervy, thinking about how he could use this in the women's restroom on the ship.
Yeah, man, not a big fan of how he's been this chapter.
No, he totally deserved the Nami kick to the face that he gets for that comment.
Definitely. And the rest of the group starts to put together pretty quickly that just like Sanji's being a little creep, this guy, whoever is controlling this and built this, is also into some sick things, as he basically is just spying on these people and keeping them captive while not letting them into this knowledge.
Yeah, definitely a kind of a voyeuristic type of person to just look in on everyone living their life you created. But while Luffy is excited at the prospect of finally seeing this real giant, which he's already seen Dory and Broggy and some other giants, which is just kind of funny, the rest of the crew is weighing in on their choices as to whether they'd rather escape now and just avoid seeing this giant, or whether they want to go back to town to get some more information from the townsfolk about what even is going on here.
Yeah, and surprisingly, for once, Luffy was actually listening to the crew's discourse, but he does have most of his attention diverted by the snake that has snuck up on the group and is seemingly prepared to strike.
And yeah, it's only when they see this beast that Nami and Usopp are like, oh yeah, go for it, you're totally doing something more important.
It's like, yeah, give me 1 second quick.
But it's after witnessing this predator that Nami and Usopp also noticed a pair of rats approaching by their feet and a crow swooping in from above them. It's pretty easy for them now face to face with these beasts to comprehend that these are probably the Rabid Guardians they were warned about earlier. But this is definitely not the kind of temple they foresaw when they were thinking about that.
It definitely was not. And as we move on to page 11, we cut briefly outside of where all this chaos is going on. And we see a true giant figure wearing some sort of jackalope skull as a mask, while wielding a scepter with the outline of the sun in hand, approaching a door as they begin to hear the sounds of the struggle and argument unfolding on the inside of the room.
And as they get closer and closer to the door, and they start to reach for what would be the handle, they start hearing more clear voices arguing that they need to finish this quickly before the sun god returns, before very quickly escalating to, wait, that's totally overkill, why is everything on fire? I'm not the one that destroyed the fireplace. Very quickly just goes to shit. And despite wearing this full skull mask, you can clearly tell this individual's getting more panicked. It's like, what is going on?
Yeah, and I mean, for good reason, because as they swing the door open, they're staring down a true battle between their beasts and the Straw Hats, including Gear 5 Luffy, amidst a field of flames, as they internalize their temple is actively being destroyed.
Usopp is probably the most reasonable reaction here, where he's like, Luffy, we gotta go, he's here. And while Luffy does listen, he also just continues to not miss a beat and be like, alright, well, I have to finish launching up this attack first before we get going, because I promise you I'd blow these guys away.
Yeah, and it's then that Luffy unleashes his Gum Booming Dawn pistol, contorting the neck of this snake as he punches him right in the jugular.
It was kind of hard to tell what exactly he was punching at first. You could just see he was punching something, but the Gear 5 ability to distort reality of certain things is just so goofy at times in still images.
Yeah, and that makes it, like you said, very hard to read as one image, black and white.
But this is enough to knock out the beast, and as it falls, the giant calls out for his pet by the name Hilmengander, which is pretty reminiscent of the name Jormungandr, which sometimes called the world serpent, but is also well known to be encircling the world sea with its tail in its mouth. But we can discuss more of the Norse lore implications of this later, as there's still something going on in this chapter.
Yeah, after this beast has fallen, Luffy returns to his crew as they begin to formulate what their next move should be.
And it's not long before they can do any planning that on the last page we see the cat return, jumping into the battle scene to assist its master. But as it quickly charges at the crew, they don't even show the attack. You just see an old Batman bam from punching it, and they immediately show the crew now riding on its back as though they just stole a vehicle and it's now their escape vehicle away from what's happening. It's just, it happened so fast the first time I didn't even recognize it because I just saw the cat, and then I look in the next scene and they're on its back running away.
Yeah, it was really just, they're on top of it. And Chopper does translate for us the cat's dissonance, saying that they're going to pay for this. But Nami gives the cat little thought as she showcases a blueprint, or as everyone else recognizes, a map of the city that she found, so they no longer will be navigating without any sense of direction.
Yeah, leave it up to our navigator to get us on the right path. And when they do turn to see behind them what exactly they're running away from, it truly does look like Ragnarok has struck for this tiny nation as they look up and see a towering figure of their sun god, wielding his scepter and a sun shield now, talking about how they've defiled his beloved country. And these poor people are just looking up in terror.
Yeah, this dude actually is a terrible person. They deserve better. He's just ruling over them with fear. And this is messed up. But on the flip side, the Straw Hats are very calm and quickly able to assess an escape route, busting their way through the wall on the other side of the town.
So now it seems like the Straw Hats have their plan, where they're going to go, and how they're going to try and find the rest of what is going to be considered probably real Elbaf. But this is not going to be so easy, as the last quote we get to end the chapter is a close-up of this giant and their eye in the middle of this skull mask just claiming, "I won't let you escape."
Yeah, it's about to go down big time. And I mean, he's got a reason to be angry. They did just destroy his entire room and his little civilization that he set up.
But it's no small thing to say that adventure has ramped up to giant proportions, no pun intended, very quickly here, and we're back into another gigantic chase scene. But luckily, we won't have to wait too long or another chapter to learn about even more of this wild world that we've been dropped in.
But before we get there, we do want to share one prediction that we have in the meantime. And that is that we believe that the giant chasing this crew is the one and only Loki.
It would match with our initial thought that a younger giant having a sort of playroom would have created this brick world, but it almost feels alluded to at this point by naming the snake Hilmengander. As we mentioned before, Jormungandr in Norse mythology is a giant serpent whose battle with and death with Thor is often associated with Ragnarok, but another detail of their lore is that Jormungandr is the second offspring of Loki. And while I do not think this is the child of that giant, having one as a pet does seem to keep that sort of relationship and translate well to the story here.
Yeah, we'll see if our suspicions are confirmed, hopefully soon, maybe even in the next chapter. But in the meantime, thank you all for tuning in. Make sure to hit that like button if you enjoyed the video. Let us know if you think our prediction is correct in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe if it's your first time finding our channel. And most importantly, don't forget, be crew.